We're just 2 months away from wrapping up the year, and it's been packed with so many standout games. Whether you're hunting for something new or revisiting a familiar franchise, this list covers titles worth your time. By the way, I'm constantly uploading videos, so if you find something here that catches your eye, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date with the best recommendations. Let's start this list with Dragon's Dogma 2. Dragon's Dogma 2 kicks off with a bit of a rough patch due to performance issues which can slow things down. But after some crucial updates, those issues are addressed and everything flows way more smoothly now. People who love the first game will appreciate how the sequel stays true to its open-world charm, particularly in the fluid combat system that lets you grapple onto massive monsters or coordinate with your AI-controlled pawns. It's flexible and feels reactive. The whole dynamic of taking down enemies using tactics from climbing them to shoot fire arrows at their weak points is still a core thrill. Even small updates like better AI for your companion pawns give the game a fresher feel. Those mechanics make the journeys feel way more alive. The story may hinge on standard fantasy tropes like dragons and curses, but with a world this interactive and freedom in combat like that, you don't really mind, especially now that things run more fluidly. The visual design also got some love, with sprawling vistas, towering beasts, and haunting night encounters showing off the work on the improved performance. Definitely worth jumping in now that it's gotten those polish updates. Coming up next is Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2. With Space Marine 2, it's all about those big, larger-than-life battles. Whether you're mowing down waves of Tyranids or getting into brutal melee skirmishes, the feeling of raw power is everywhere. You're this tank of a character, and as a player, you feel that with every explosive gunshot and every swing of a chainsword. The scale of combat and gameplay stakes is amped up from the original in ways that are super satisfying, mixing fast, over-the-top firepower with meaty close quarters. Then there's the co-op. If you want the mayhem of Space Marine but with friends, this game absolutely delivers. Combining your strengths against endless hordes is unlike anything else right now. The visuals push it even further. The armor designs, the war-torn environments, all of that feels perfectly steeped in the aesthetics of the Warhammer universe. No surprises that it nails the look of the grimdark universe, but this time, the smooth performance makes it both a spectacle and a well-oiled machine in terms of gameplay design. The story set against that brutal universe doesn't try to overcomplicate things, and focuses more on letting you just annihilate swarms.
Here we go!
Next on the list is Mario vs. Donkey Kong Remake. Now, Mario vs. Donkey Kong is kind of that classic puzzle platformer formula, but there's something here that feels fresh again. You're still navigating Mario through simple but puzzling levels, figuring things out as you go, and yeah, it's timed. But there's this added polish this time around. It's smooth and the controls are tight, which you need when you're dealing with those later, trickier levels. While the game revolves around similar mechanics and looks to its earlier iterations, newcomers are finding it still feels contemporary in a way. There's an odd sort of nostalgia with a modern twist in its visuals. The way the environments pop now compared to what you remember from past Mario vs. Donkey Kong games, it brings back that sense of classic joy but more vibrant. Also, if you're the puzzling type who enjoys experimentation, there's a real satisfaction in figuring out how to automate things later on. The challenge ramps up in ways some players might not expect after their first go at the easier levels. It pulls you in gradually instead of startling with difficulty spikes. Definitely way more fun than you'd give it credit for. Next up, we have another remake. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door Remake. This game also feels like a time machine that updates one of the most charming RPGs of the GameCube era for modern eyes. The whimsical world, with its ultra-stylized paper aesthetic and fun dialogues, returns bigger, brighter, and sharper in the remake. Fans of the original remember the game's humor and charm, but now the visuals tie the whole package together beautifully. The crisp colors and animation make every corner of the world pop. It's a turn-based RPG at its core, but there's this layer of creativity here with badge setups and timing-based attacks that keep the combat engaging instead of just sticking to the usual formula. Exploring this paper-thin world feels satisfying, from clever environmental puzzles to quirky characters who still bring smiles to anyone who loves Mario's RPG outings. It doesn't shy away from throwing some real, heartfelt moments too, especially through its story and witty writing. For people who missed out on it during the GameCube era, there's more than enough reason to jump in now and get lost in this goofy but heartfelt Mario adventure.
Yeah.
Up next is Princess Peach Showtime. Yeah, this is the third Nintendo exclusive game on this list, but please bear with me. In Princess Peach Showtime, Peach finally takes the lead, being more than just a damsel, showing up with her own bag of tricks. The game isn't afraid to let her show off unique abilities, transforming her role into anything from a skilled swordswoman to a detective, depending on the level. It's refreshing seeing her adapt to every quirky stage, and this game feels like it's throwing something new your way all the time, keeping the pace quick and varied. Each act, centered around a different theme, makes for a dynamic storytelling experience. The art design has a pop theater style to it, blending Peach's usual charm with stage flair, like set pieces that literally transform under your feet. The puzzle platforming elements tie closely to her changing personas, creating distinct mechanics based on which transformation she's using. In one stage, she might be using ballet leaps to dodge obstacles, while in another, she's leading an action-packed sword fight. It's giving players a new layer of depth in how they approach Peach's abilities, matching the creativity of Super Mario Odyssey, but tailored to a more finely tuned, fun narrative about Peach stepping into a leading role for once. This one's a must-play. Black Myth Wukong. So, Black Myth Wukong, where do you even start with something like this? Right out of the gate, it hits differently with visuals that are jaw-dropping on every single level. Anyone who's seen gameplay footage was probably expecting a decent action-adventure game, but what came next was a shocker when it launched. It's not often something surpasses the hype like that, selling 10 million copies within the first 3 days, making it one of those must-play titles. The combat is the stuff true action fans dream of, focused, responsive, and with this special kind of weight to every hit and parry. Whether you're fighting one of the oversized bosses or smaller enemies, there's a flow and rhythm that feels incredibly rewarding. The mythological story, tied to Wukong's transformation abilities and combat stances, blends seamlessly with incredible enemy variety. It's grounded in Chinese mythology in such a striking and authentic way that every environment, every monster just keeps you glued. Plus, there's that level of exploration that feels as open as it should be, where you're weaving through dense forests, abandoned ruins, and all those high fantasy elements without skipping a beat. All of it wrapped in feature-rich next-gen game design that leaves the tech side flawless. Let's keep things going with Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. When you hear Prince of Persia, it's easy to think of those acrobatics, crazy time-bending feats, and tight platforming. Well, The Lost Crown completely modernizes that formula. It's not just about puzzles and tight jumps anymore. It combines those with fast-paced combat, an excellent emphasis on real-time strategy, and weaving between ancient traps while pulling off crazy parkour. Gone is the blocky platforming of old. Every move feels dynamic, sharp, and rewarding. The new protagonist, Sargon, brings a younger, more energetic spin to the game's DNA. You've got a whole host of fresh abilities beyond the traditional time rewind stuff. Things like more fluid combat where players can dodge, counter, and unleash flashy, momentum-based attacks. The game blends all of that so smoothly within its intricate environments, balancing a mix of exploration with combat flair. Visuals look great, especially given how detailed Persia's diverse landscapes are portrayed, from desert ruins to lush, magical zones. The puzzles still retain that charm, yet there's this added skill-based twist that's generously layered into the more action-oriented moments. It's not like the original Prince of Persia series anymore. The tone feels punchier, but in a good, exciting way.
Shut up. Relax, just shut up.
Next up is The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. This game elevates an already near-perfect emotional narrative with technical enhancements that might seem subtle at first, but they're there every step of the way. Even though some players had mixed feelings on the original story direction, there's no denying the remaster polishes the experience with 4K textures and buttery smooth frame rates for those with next-gen consoles. It automatically feels richer, darker, and creepier when playing through Ellie's harrowing journey. The photorealism in both character faces and the environment somehow draw you even deeper into those brutal moments. Weapon haptics take the sense of weight in combat up a notch, making each shot or swing feel tangible. Riding through the more open-world sections feels even more responsive now, creating perfect moments where you're torn between taking in the visual fidelity of a broken world or focusing on pure survival tactics. Whether you're sneaking through high-grass fields or dodging outlandish cult followers, there's something extra satisfying in how fluid and deliberate everything feels. Given the remaster's lean into maximizing performance, it tightens up the few combat quirks that detracted early on for players and offers a fresh reason to relive The Last of Us Part 2 at its best. Let's continue with Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. From the get-go, it's clear Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 isn't just about improving or continuing the story of Hellblade. This is all about doubling down on that uneasy atmosphere, pulling you even further into Senua's fractured reality, both visually and emotionally. What drew so many people to the first game, the horrifying realism of psychosis mixed with Norse myth, becomes even more of a visceral, haunting experience in the sequel. The performance-capturing tech used here makes Senua's expressions feel almost uncomfortably real in moments of distress. But while the psychological elements hit hard, the environmental design still stands out just as much. The barren, cold landscapes of the Viking world conjure this heavy, foreboding tension throughout. Each encounter with an enemy feels raw and personal, with combat mechanics evolving into slightly more complex patterns. You've got that same deliberate weight behind her strikes, enhanced by the sense of survival rather than domination. Kind of like you're wielding a blade for survival more than sport. Then mix in the immersive sound design. Voices clouding Senua's mind or vivid visual distortions shift how you experience the world. You're never fully sure of what's coming next. It's an unsettling but captivating descent into madness that feels unlike anything else out there right now. Now we have Pacific Drive. In Pacific Drive, you aren't running through chaotic gunfights or fighting massive bosses. It's all about the eerie, isolated drive through a mysterious, anomaly-filled zone. The car is your only lifeline. It's part survival, part road trip. If that road trip involved hazards like aggressive storms, weird sci-fi anomalies, and strange creatures that blur the line between reality and something else. What hits hardest about Pacific Drive is the atmosphere of unease as you tinker with your beat-up vehicle, just trying to keep it running so you don't get swallowed alive by the wild, freaky zone around you. Things like managing your car's engine, tracking repairs on the fly, or scavenging for scrap give the whole ordeal a mechanical stress loop. Each drive feels like venturing deeper into a nightmare, combining oppressive environments with bits of hope that maybe you'll find something useful. Visually, it's immersive. The way the landscapes slowly devolve into odd chaos, the skies turning unnatural colors, and small details like your radio reacting to anomalies are equal parts gripping and unsettling. The tension escalates with every mile, creating an intuitive but nail-biting experience you've got to feel firsthand. If you're a fan of the first Hades, you should definitely not sleep on Hades 2. Hades 2 may still be in early access, yet it's already delivering that highly addictive action roguelike charm from the first game. Supergiant Games has this way of creating combat systems that reward skill and flexibility. Known for how tight movements and combat in the original Hades were, this sequel maybe even sharpens it more. With new weapons, new godly abilities, and a brand new protagonist, Melinoe, the vibe is both familiar and fresh. One of the things players are noticing is how this time, the game gives you even more ways to replay over and over again without things getting repetitive. They've expanded on different upgrade paths, and bosses tweak their strategies each time. You can already see the potential for endless replayability, even in its current state. Plus, the voice acting and world building seem to follow that same high standard the first game had, giving players dialogue with the Olympians that feels rewarding. The handcrafted art style, music that sets the tone, and that signature Supergiant touch are all here. Any fan of roguelikes or those hooked on Hades will keep their eyes glued to this in anticipation for its full release. Now, let's take a look at Little Kitty Big City. If Stray's city exploration and cat-centric mechanics struck a chord with you, then Little Kitty Big City has something to offer as well in its own way. Here's the thing, the game lets you just be a cat. No dystopia, no high-stakes drama, just wandering around, climbing up buildings, causing absolute chaos, or, if it's that kind of day, messing with the urban wildlife, all while looking for your way home. It's got this charm to it, focusing on giving you the sandbox freedom to explore and interact at your own pace. The art style has a hand-drawn feel to it, rather than anything too polished or realistic, which fits the laid-back, fun vibe the game goes for. The tasks are as simple as a kitten wandering around a city, finding things to toy with. It doesn't take itself seriously, and that's sort of where the magic happens. It's pure fun, especially if you enjoyed that sense of immersion in Stray's world. This one trades the moody atmosphere for a more light-hearted approach, but there's still something irresistibly playful about becoming fully immersed as a curious, mischievous cat. You can't make this list without mentioning Silent Hill 2 Remake. Where do you start with this one? It's already got a high bar since the original is often hailed as one of the top survival horror titles of all time, and with modern remakes stepping up the quality, this one proves it still hits hard. The current-gen graphics take the dingy, fog-filled town and turn it into something far more terrifying. That psychological horror gets amplified, especially with the facial capture technology making protagonist James Sunderland's descent into madness a lot more personal, maybe even too personal at some moments. It's the tension, the subtle creeping sense of dread you feel as you wander through the fog. Whether it's the ambient sounds like footsteps coming from who knows where or the haunting, revamped soundtrack pushing you through eerie hallways. That experience somehow felt scarier with better graphics, more vivid environments, and AI tweaks that made fights with enemies like Pyramid Head even more unpredictable. For longtime fans, this remake keeps core horror elements in place while bringing everything up a notch to get under your skin all over again. Alright, coming in next is Wild Bastards. Here's the thing about Wild Bastards. Blue Manchu nails this combination of strategy and action that's just so tight, right? You already know they brought us Void Bastards, which had that whole comic book roguelike shooter vibe, but Wild Bastards is like this chaotic cocktail of space western grit and tactics. I mean, we're talking planet hopping and managing a motley crew of outlaws, but it's really about those moments, when you're in a standoff, gun in hand, and the game suddenly snaps into these fast, tactical shootouts. The characters? Each outlaw's got their baggage. You're not just slapping together a team of 13 gunslingers and calling it a day. They've got personalities, grudges, vendettas, and you've got to manage that tension out on the battlefield. You ever play a game where two of your teammates literally refuse to cover each other because they've been feuding? Yeah, that happens here. And honestly, it makes the whole thing feel more alive. Like some gritty soap opera in space, except everyone's strapped with guns and abilities. It's strategy alright, but no smooth sailing. What I wasn't expecting? The procedural galaxy. No planet feels the same, and each one packs its own weirdness. Like gravity altering mid-battle, bullets suddenly curving in playing field. Stuff like that keeps you sharp constantly. If you enjoyed the previous title from the developer, you definitely should check this one out. Up next, we have Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree. I know this is technically a DLC, but Shadow of the Erd Tree still feels like a whole new world packed onto Elden Ring's already expansive map. The new areas deserve mention all on their own. From the lush yet decayed trees to desolate ruins, there's always a spot you haven't quite discovered. Not to mention, the whole vibe of these regions are totally eerie, expanding Elden Ring's lore while providing absolutely breathtaking vistas. Every new boss feels like an ordeal, and yes, they will make you cry in the way From Software bosses always do. In typical Soulsborne fashion, it's a grueling challenge where every move counts, but that satisfaction when you nail the fights is heightened here. The world feels familiar but foreign, filled with new secrets, strange NPCs, and a deeper focus on intertwining lore about the Erd Tree itself. Those moments where you drop down into some murky dungeon and immediately hear the distant roar of something unknown, yeah, those are back in full force. Fans of Elden Ring who were hungry for more won't want to miss this. It's not just new bosses, it's an extension of that journey but condensed into something almost equally as unforgettable. Now, let's move on to Astro Bot. Astro Bot picks up where Astro's Playroom left off and somehow keeps running with that same infectious sense of wonder. The platforming is just as tight as before. Every jump, slide, and flip lands in this polished, ultra-responsive way that shows just how much thought goes into these controls. It's not just a game, it's a showcase for what innovative platforming can feel like when developers take full advantage of hardware features. Everything here is designed to engage, whether it's cute, dynamic levels, clever puzzles, or solid tight mechanics that keep things fluid. You're constantly discovering new ways Astro Bot interacts with the environment. Trust the haptics to make you really feel the different surfaces, textures, and weather conditions Astro encounters. Combine that with playful, vibrant, and imaginative level design, and you've got a game that doesn't just look good, it feels meticulously crafted for each moment. Whether it's tugging on ropes, cranking levers, or blasting through space, there's always something to make you smile. The charm Astro brings is hard to compare to anything else right now, and while it pulls at nostalgic strings, it also leans hard into pushing what future platforming games could be. Up next is Creatures of Ava. Creatures of Ava brings something fresh to the creature collecting world. It's more wild and chaotic than something like Pokemon or Temtem. The main standout here is the unpredictability. Its world is brimming with strange, unique creatures that react to different environmental stimuli, not just level grinding or standard evolution trees. You're essentially thrown into this bizarre planet and told to deal with whatever you find, whether it's creatures that morph shapes based on weather or those that adopt traits inspired by other creatures they've encountered. It's the survival and exploration-focused aspect that really sets it apart. Biomes and creatures of Ava feel more alive because they change as you move through them, and with them, the creatures adapt in ways that bring surprises around every corner. The art design is vibrant with an almost alien organic feel, making even the tamest creatures feel like they could be dangerous if given the right or wrong push. It balances that combination of exploration, taming, and a living, breathing world that keeps things fresh each session. Next, we've got Rise of the Ronin. Now, everyone's drawing comparisons between Rise of the Ronin and Ghost of Tsushima, but here's the thing. Rise of the Ronin is doing its own thing and doing it well. Set during a chaotic period in Japanese history, the closing era of the Edo period, you're playing as a Ronin navigating political turmoil, shifting loyalties, and a country on the brink of radical change. There's a weight to every decision, with a mix of sword fighting, gunpowder weapons, and intricate swordplay blending seamlessly with a more expansive, open-world experience. The combat is tight, borrowing from both modern fast-paced action and traditional Bushido-like precision, but where Rise of the Ronin pulls ahead is in its heavier historical lean. The world building brings dark undertones and complex moral decision-making against the backdrop of Japan's modernization. From historical figures to real-world political struggles, this world feels alive and taps into the uncertainty of a Ronin's existence. You wander this conflicted land not through peaceful exploration, but making your gritty choices with the tools the era provides. There's an immersive intensity, different enough from Ghost of Tsushima to stand alone. If you're a fan of roguelike and deck-building games, then you've got to check out Balatro. Balatro flips the roguelike deck-building genre with a sense of humor and absurdity that hits just right. You start with a simple deck, but as you play, you're creating poker hands to rack up chips and pulling off wild combos with special joker cards. It's like taking the strategy of poker, mixing it with some unpredictable twists, and then throwing in that one more run feel that roguelikes always have. It's one of those games that's easy to jump into, but has a lot of depth the more you play. Plus, it's not just on PC and consoles anymore. Balatro's on mobile too, so you can sneak in a quick run on the go. The charm is all in the mix. A little strategy, a little luck, and a whole lot of just one more try itch. If you like card games with a twist, you'll probably get hooked. Let's keep things going with Deep Rock Galactic Survivor. Still in early access like Hades 2, Deep Rock Galactic Survivor kicks things off with its signature dwarf-infused, action-packed chaos, but in a new top-down roguelike format. Instead of FPS mining expeditions, you're now controlling your dwarf through swarms of alien creatures in intense bullet hell battles. The loop here revolves heavily around survival, building your arsenal of weapons, gathering resources, then figuring out how to last longer in constant waves of alien threats darting at you from all angles. While the mining aspect isn't as central as in previous iterations, the game's sense of momentum and environment destruction still makes navigating through levels fresh with tactical choices. It's about adjusting to the roguelike mechanics, figuring out how to balance mining for resources and fending off hostiles. Gear upgrades and class abilities ensure no two runs feel exactly the same. Even in its early access state, players are encountering addictive gameplay loops that have them returning just to see if they can tweak their strategy or weapon layout a little better. It's high pressure and frenetic, but with that sprinkle of strategy and resource management fans loved from the Deep Rock Galactic universe.
No problem!
Next, we've got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth takes that middle chapter of a beloved story and shifts things into gear, expanding even further on the remake's layered combat and wild narrative flourishes. Instead of retreading the same beats, it takes risks, some of which reframe the structures of the original story. The big appeal, though, is the open-world segments. You're finally able to roam around vast stretches of Gaia, taking in iconic locations but fully realized for the modern day, with environmental details that are breathtaking. Whether it's the dense forests or sprawling plains, everything feels interconnected. Combat here remains a smooth blend of real-time action and the slower, tactical decisions from the first remake. There's so much freedom in how you approach enemy encounters, with all new limit breaks, expanded team synergies, and more opportunities to play around with materia. Plus, there's this added joy of just exploring, ticking off side quests, and soaking in the vivid environments, all while unraveling a narrative that ensures even veterans of the original don't know exactly what's up next. Rebirth doesn't just follow Final Fantasy VII's path, it reinvents whole sections of it, giving the player more control and leaving plenty of room for speculation.
The enemy's down! Good hit! I can handle it!
Coming in next is Persona 3 Reload. Persona 3 Reload takes players back to one of the franchise's most defining entries, yet there's something about how it does more than just slap on a fresh coat of paint. It's mainly the way the revamped visuals and modern-day quality of life features breathe new life into that journey of supernatural high school life, shadow combat, and the beloved social link system. For those who struggled with the more hardcore, old-school mechanics of the original, this version feels crisper, more approachable, and way more streamlined while still maintaining that same soul. The game has rushed away from the portable limitation of previous versions. Random battle encounters are way smoother, and you don't have to grind through frustrating moments. The 3D dungeon crawling looks so much more immersive too. The mix of heartbreak, time management, and existential themes hits just as hard as ever, especially when paired with its enhanced storytelling elements. That soundtrack, though, returning with new arrangements, still builds this incredibly atmospheric vibe. Whether you're diving into the emotional toll of the Dark Hour or simply hanging with your friends, everything feels more vivid this time around. You either already love Persona 3 or about to. Next up is SteamWorld Heist 2. SteamWorld Heist 2 takes the 2D tactical shooter from the original and dials things up. The sequel dives even deeper into the underpipes operations of your ragtag robot crew, sprinkling in more mechanical precision and strategic depth. What makes this franchise so beloved stands tall here too. The unique side-scrolling approach to tactical shooter gameplay. You're still bouncing bullets off walls and gunning down enemy robots with precision shots, except now there are more tricks available to tinker with. Players who loved how SteamWorld Heist kept things fresh with its turn-based combat will find that SteamWorld Heist 2 doesn't just add new guns, it gives you new movement options, new abilities for every crew member, and a more interactive environment. Levels are more intricate, letting you use the terrain creatively to outflank and outplay your enemies. The art style returns with a steampunk edge that's colorful but gritty, while the onboard banter keeps the charm intact. You're constantly managing your resources, strategizing spectacular shots, and that little dopamine hit from a perfectly angled ricochet feels just as satisfying, if not more so now. Plus, the expanded universe lore with messy heists and scrappy rebellion keeps this world irresistible. Another solid entry on the list is Another Crab's Treasure. Another Crab's Treasure takes the Souls-like genre and gives it an underwater twist, delivering a fresh experience within a world of crabs and aquatic creatures. Yeah, it's a bit quirky, but that's what makes this title so fun. Instead of knights in armor, you play as a tiny crab scavenging for new shells, your actual armor. What stands out is how it embraces that Souls-like flavor with difficult, deliberate combat and feeling out enemy moves, but with a playful edge that keeps things light and approachable. Each enemy encounter makes you think tactically. You're not just mindlessly swinging your claws. You've got to take risks, dodge perfectly, and adapt. New shells you pick up along the ocean floor change your abilities. Maybe you'll grab some discarded trash and use it as a temporary shell, which is a hilarious twist on standard loot mechanics, but it works. The ocean itself feels alive and hostile, with giant sea creatures lurking about and uncharted depths waiting for you to explore. It's got environmental charm too, and taking Souls-like gameplay into a vibrant, bizarre underwater world gives it a unique aesthetic that's slightly more lighthearted while still packing that challenge Seal fans crave. Let's continue with Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 promised explosive team-based action from the start, and it delivered on most of that hype. Throwing you into breakneck cooperative missions where friendly fire is always on, it added this fun edge to strategizing with your group in the heat of chaos. However, Sony's initial announcement that the game was locked behind a PSN account caused a real dip in the player base. That policy's revoked now, and you can feel the game's potential climbing back. It deserves a second look because at its core, Helldivers 2 is still a next-level blend of over-the-top combat and tactical strategy, with a class system that keeps things structured but not too rigid, and the possibility of bringing down massive turrets or airstrikes. Each mission feels unpredictable. You coordinate with your squad while managing ammo, enemies, and that constant threat of a misfire from your own team's bullets. The depth is in its systems. Everything from character customization to unlocking better gear rewards smart, competent play. The universe of Helldivers throws you against giant bugs or oppressive alien forces in ways that feel intense but also satisfying as mayhem unfolds. Even after that player-drained situation, there's enough adrenaline-fueled greatness left to reignite anyone's interest. Let's keep things going with Like a Dragon: Infinite Wealth. Like a Dragon: Infinite Wealth takes the Yakuza series into completely wild territory, carving out something original while sticking to the absurdity and drama fans expect. Ichiban is back, and this time he's in Hawaii, a setting fresh for the series. Instead of the usual streets of Kamurocho, you're navigating the West Coast, and that backdrop changes things up, not just socially, but also in how fights play out. Infinite Wealth embraces its turn-based combat with an extra layer of zaniness. You've got Ichiban taking on gangsters, doing quests, and leveling up in the weirdest, most over-the-top ways possible. It knows when to land a heavy emotional punch, and how to break that tension with laugh-out-loud moments that play off the franchise's charm. Combat feels fluid, with new skills and tactics leaning into the absurd, making full use of the environment. One minute you're somebody's hero, next minute you're fighting with everyday objects found on the streets. The minigames are still bonkers, of course, bringing that right mix of heart and humor, while also stacking side quests with personalities you won't soon forget. Infinite Wealth bridges sprawling crime drama with moments of total unpredictability, continuing to push the Like a Dragon series into new, uncharted waters. Coming in next is Stellar Blade. Stellar Blade definitely shakes things up in the action RPG space. It's visually stunning, and everything feels polished in a futuristic world that balances dystopian sci-fi vibes with intense visceral swordplay. You play as Eve, and the combat reflects that heavy, stylish flow as you pull off chain combos midair or block parries with razor-sharp timing. What makes Stellar Blade stand out is its focus on precision. Every encounter requires you to lock in on your enemies, read their attacks, and counter just before it's too late, similar to a Dark Souls vibe but with splashes of sci-fi flair. Add in some flashy boss fights and you've got an experience that forces you to strategize more instead of slashing mindlessly. There's a nice mix of rhythm-based action and exploration as you move through ruined urban landscapes and massive futuristic structures. Eve herself is a perfect model for advanced customization, letting you tweak abilities for specific types of encounters, giving the player multiple ways to play beyond just basic hack and slash. Visually, it leans hard into cyberpunk aesthetics with sharp, metallic environments, and the far-off mystery in Stellar Blade's world leaves players engaged with both the mechanics and its narrative depth.
I'll vaporize you!
To wrap things up, we've got Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Surprises aren't rare when it comes to Dragon Ball games, but Dragon Ball Sparking Zero definitely packs in more than expected. Sure, it's got the familiar, adrenaline-pumping combat of previous titles, especially in terms of arena-style battles and fast-paced combos. Fans of the Budokai Tenkaichi series will recognize the throwbacks, but Sparking Zero comes with the extra spice of new mechanics that elevate these chaotic, energy-blasting brawls. Leaning heavily into destructible environments, you've got battlefields that change as you nail powerful moves. The game introduces revamped character transformations, allowing for smoother transitions and expanding strategy as different forms become accessible mid-battle. On top of that, it leans into a larger fighter roster, as expected for any Dragon Ball game, but also provides more diverse movesets. Goku still packs his usual punches, but the added layers of new customization and tweaking make this title feel less predictable than previous installments. Players can also experience more chaotic, large-scale battles with enhanced multiplayer modes, fun for both veterans and newcomers to the franchise. Overall, Sparking Zero brings a fresh jolt to the Dragon Ball universe, offering more than just flashy, over-the-top fights without losing the energy fans expect. That wraps up the list. If any of these games caught your eye, or if you've got some recommendations of your own, drop them in the comments below. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll catch you in the next one.